Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? So, President of Young Israel of North Beverly Hills, it is my pleasure to welcome everyone to another one of our series of concerts, this one about Chazanut. The concert, sponsored by Young Israel of North Beverly Hills and featuring our own Chazan, Nati Baram. Nati is a world-renowned Chazan who has produced and performed in many different concerts in our show, from Bocelli to Shlomo Carlebach, from Elvis to Chazanut. It is very befitting for Nati to have this concert today, as this past Shabbos, when we read Parshas Beshalach, which is sometimes referred to as a Shabbos Shira, the Shabbos of song. Why? Because in this Parsha, Hashem created yet another miracle to save Bnei Israel from the Egyptians by the splitting of the Yam Suf, the Red Sea, allowing Bnei Israel to escape the pursuit of the Egyptians. When Bnei Israel crossed the Yam Suf and the Egyptians were destroyed, Moshe and the rest of Bnei Israel sang Az Yashir to Hashem, thanking him for all of his miracles. Hashem was so moved by this song that we include it in our davening every morning, hence the reference of Shabbos Shira. I invite you all to listen, to sit back and listen to Nati sing like an angel like he does. Close your eyes and thank Hashem for the miracles that he has brought upon us to allow us to be here today. I'm now going to turn the program over to Nati and hope that all of you enjoy, because I'm sure you will. Thank you very much.
מתרצה ברחמים ומתפייס בתחנוני מתרצה ברחמים ומתפייס בתחנונים ומתפייס בתחנונים מתרצה והתפייס לדור עשה עמנו צדקה. עשה עמנו צדקה. צדקה וחסד והושיענו עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד. עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד והושיענו. עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד. עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד והושיענו. צדקה וחסד והושיענו.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me. Yes? I'm Mark Kligman. I'm a professor at UCLA. I have an endowed chair in Jewish music. I'm also the director of the Lowell Milken Center for Music of the American Jewish Experience. We welcome you this morning to this wonderful program. I really wish we could be all together at Young Israel of North Beverly Hills in the beautiful synagogue with the beautiful and wonderful acoustics, and hear Nati sing live with instrumentalists and our choir, but hopefully we'll all get there sometime soon. I'd like to share with you just a few words about the background of the period of time of the great Cantorate of the Golden Age. Three cantors that we're featuring today, Mordechai Hirschman, Leib Grans, and Israel Alter, are all three extraordinary cantors, and they've made a very lasting impact, and we're so glad to present their music to you today. We talk about the period of time from 1880 to 1930 as the golden age of the Cantorate. This is the time period that close to 2 million Jews come from Eastern Europe to the United States. And there's an incredible change to American Jewry during that time period. For the world of synagogue music, the cantors who came, we not only have them in their music, but something that we never had before in the history of Jewish music, and that's the actual recordings of these cantors. Many of these cantors recorded on 78s, and those 78 recordings that have been digitized or redistributed or redone today, give us that lasting sound of not only the music of these cantors, but how they sounded. And it is a very, very important part of the history of the American Cantorate. Just like we do in musicology when we talk about Beethoven, we talk about early, middle, and late Beethoven, we look at the golden age of the Cantorate as three different periods. The first wave, the initial cantors that came in the 1890s, and then others who came in subsequent years. Today, we're going to be featuring Mordechai Hirschman, who's a part of the second wave, who came to the United States in 1920, Leib Glantz, who came to the United States in 1926, as well as Israel Alter, who came a little bit later in 1961. Each has their own unique story, and together with the many other cantors of the Golden Age, they've made a lasting impression. Here are just some photographs of some cantors of this era. Yosel Rosenblatt is perhaps the most well-known name since he recorded the most albums and is featured in part in the first talkie, The Jazz Singer. What I'd like to do is just spend just about a minute for you to hear one of the very early recordings. The cantor's name is Alter Carniel. Alter Carniel was one of the first cantors to record. This is a very early recording of the early 1900s. It's going to sound like many 78s do with lots of pops and hisses, but that's a part of the sound. But I'd like you to hear just about a minute of one of these early recordings well over 100 years ago of Alter Carniel. So this represents the early beginning of the sound of the great Cantorate. Rosenblatt took it, did something with it, as did Kvarten, Reutemann, many of the other cantors, until we get towards the third wave of people like Pierre Pinchik and others that have really transformed that sort of very early nascent sound world, as we heard with Carniel, with the sliding between notes, with the crexes, the drays, the various expressive devices that he uses to really express the text, give emotion and meaning to the music. And then other cantors do that as well as time goes on. I want to share with you some research that we're doing at UCLA, and I'm working with people in digital humanities where we try and visualize a great deal of data and information. All the little small dots represent various individuals who've been interviewed, and these interviews were done by the Milken Archive over a 20-year period. There are about 180 people who've been interviewed, some names you might recognize. And what the lines refer to is what person who we interviewed, who was interviewed, talked about another individual. And as you can see that certain names come out really big, like Yosel Rosenblatt. He's the most talked about cantor amongst all the people we looked at. And I just want you to see that as we look at the core of these different big names of cantors, how many of them revolve around the cantorate. So people who are talking about Jewish music in these interviews, everything stems in America around cantorial music. Mordechai Hirschman, the cantor you just heard, Cantor Baram sing, is a very important individual in this whole mix. As is, as you see, Jan Pierce, Richard Tucker, Oscar Julius, who was a conductor, Moses Ganchoff, Moshe Kusevitsky. These are all the main names, and they're the ones who really made the most impact. We're going to hear another piece of Mordechai Hirschman, but just wanted to give you a little bit of information about him. He was born in 1888 in Ukraine. His father died when he was really young. He lived with a foster family, then he was adopted at the age of 12 by his grandfather. and became a Hazan in 1904 at, I think I put the wrong date on the screen, not in 1940, 1904, in Zhytomyr, and then he went to Vilna. In 1920, he immigrated to the United States and was at a well-known synagogue in Brooklyn, the Bethel congregation. He recorded cantorial music, Yiddish, as well as opera. But he did not compose his own music. Many of the great cantors, the other ones we'll hear, actually wrote their own music. Mordechai Hirschman did not. He mostly sang the music of Yaakov or Jacob Rappaport. He toured all around the United States, and he was known for this very lyric high tenor voice. Of course, we're gifted to hear the same high lyric tenor voice with Cantor Baram. So we're going to go on now to our next song in the program with Cantor Baram singing Mordechai Hirschman's Magen Avot.
Magen Avot bidevaro mechayem eitim b'mamaro hakel HaKadosh שאין כמוהו המניח לעמו ביום שבת קודשו כי בם רצה להניח להם לפניו נעבוד ביראה ופחד ונודה לשמו בכל יום תמיד. לפניו נעבוד, לפניו נעבוד, ביראה ופחד, ונודה לשמו בכל יום תמיד, מיין הברכות, מיין אדון השלום מקדש השבת ומברך שביעי ומניח בקדושה לעמדו Zecher, zecher lemasei vereishit.
Thank you, Hazan Baram. We're going to turn next to Rabbi Penny Dunner, Mora d'Astra of Young Israel of North Beverly Hills, to tell us a little more about our next cantor, who is Israel Alter.
Well, thank you so much, Mark. And of course, thank you to Nati, so beautifully rendering these pieces of classic chazanut. I will tell you a little bit about Cantor Israel Alter, and I know that Mark and Nati know a lot more than I do, but I went actually to a source, and it's always best when you're doing your research to go to a source. Very few sources left who actually knew Cantor Israel Alter, or who could trace their family connection to him over more than 2 generations, but we have one in our own shul. And that is, of course, Dr. Steve Schloss. I know he's watching, and I'm thankful to him for having shared the information with us. Dr. Steve Schloss, of course, has been a member of our shul for many, many years, for decades. And he is an absolute example of what it means to be a good Jew in the Orthodox community of Los Angeles. And we honored him in 2015. He was the honoree at our fundraising banquet. And if you go online, you can watch the video which we dedicated to him and in which he was interviewed. But I spoke to him about Cantor Israel Alter. Now, in 1922, so almost 100 years ago, Steve Schlosser's grandfather, I think you're going to see his photo on the screen, Max Halberstadt, became president of the synagogue in Hanover. Hanover is in Germany. Hanover Synagogue was a beautiful building, so much so that the picture postcard packets that were sold to tourists in Hanover included pictures of the synagogue, as it was regarded as a major tourist attraction in the city. In any event, during his first year as president of the shul in 1922, Steve Schlosser's grandfather hired a wonderful young chazan with a beautiful tenor voice, Cantor Yisrael Alter. And Max Halberstadt, that's Steve Schlosser's grandfather, wrote all about it in his diary, which Steve Schloss has. Cantor Alter was only 21 years old at the time, very young, but very, very talented. And besides for members of the shul, many other people, including non-Jews, Germans, came to listen to him when he would sing. Alter composed a number of great cantorial works. Now, every penny he made, besides for his basic living expenses, he would send to his father, his poor father, who lived in Lemberg in Galicia, which is today Lviv in Ukraine. I spoke to Steve Schloss before the concert, and he told me he wanted to add something to what his grandfather had written in his diary. Apparently, Cantor Alter went on from Hanover to South Africa in 1935, and that's because it was no longer possible to send money if you were Jewish out of Germany, and he wanted to send money to his father. So he became the chazan in a very large shul in South Africa, and while he was there, he became internationally renowned, and much later on, he was invited to sing twice at the Carnegie Hall in New York. In fact, in his heyday, Yisrael Alter was considered by many to be the cantor of cantors, the chazan of the chazonim. And Cantor Alter lived his last years in New York. As we heard from Mark, he moved in 1961 to New York, where he continued to sing, although not, I believe, as a permanent chazan in a shul. And he died in 1979. I'm going to hand back over.
Elokeinu, רצי, רצי, רצי ומנוחתנו. קדשנו במצוותיך, ותן חלקנו בתורתך. שא ביינו מטובך, ושמחנו בישועתך. וטהר ליבנו, וטהר ליבנו, לעבדך, לעבדך, לעבדך באמת, לעבדך, לעבדך, לעבדך באמת. והנחילנו השם אלוקינו באהבה וברצון שבת קודשך, וינוחו בך, וינוחו בך, וינוחו בישראל מקדשי שמך. ברוך אתה השם, ברוך הוא וברוך שמו, מקדש, מקדש, מקדש השבת.
I just wanted to add a few words about Cantor Israel Alter, who you heard very beautifully described by Rabbi Dunner. And that is that Cantor Alter taught at the School of Sacred Music at Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion for many years when he was in the United States. I taught there for 20 years, much after Cantor Alter, but the two publications that you see in this slide are the two main publications that every cantor who goes to cantorial school, both for Reform, Conservative, and even in multi-denominational settings of seminaries, learn the music of Israel Alter. So his work really lives on in a very concrete way, in that he's notated out a lot of music, a complete music for the Chazan to sing for Shabbat, for the Yamim Noraim, for the Shalosh Regalim, and other concert pieces as well. So certainly Cantor Israel Alter will live on. And it's nice to see the connection to Stephen Schloss at Young Israel of North Beverly Hills. We're going to turn to our third cantor now, Cantor Leibglans. I'm going to say just a few words. We have some very special guests who are with us who will share us some words as well. Leibglans was born in Kiev in 1898. He was a wonderful musician, not just a singer, but someone who was able to study piano and composition. And he was always a Zionist. He always had in his heart to, very Tzionist, wanted to live in Israel, but did not get that opportunity till later in his life. He came to the United States in 1926. He made many recordings and he toured around the United States. There's a very interesting LA connection that we have to Leibglans that we'll hear about shortly. But what I'd like to do is just give a couple of minutes to one individual who's with us. There's a cantor here whose name is Joseph Nace, who's not only a cantor, but a composer and arranger who's worked very closely with the Glantz family. And I'd like to welcome Cantor Nace to say a few words about Leib Glantz.
I wasn't really prepared to say anything, but I'm going to, first of all, thank you for acknowledging me. You know, the reason why I took on a project to make a kind of cantata about, from Leib Glantz's music, his compositions. His son, Jerry Glantz, who's also here, asked me to do it. And one of the reasons why I thought it was a fantastic and amazing project was because for me, for my ears, Leib Glantz didn't necessarily create new harmonic idiom or melodic idioms, but the gestures that he used in his compositions, and certainly after listening to his internal output as a chazan, really struck me as something incredibly special. And, you know, that's one of the reasons why he takes the music of the liturgy and creates a kind of a hyper emotional and powerful transference of that text to our ears. And I found that to be incredibly unique and something that I would want to learn, number one, and hopefully I could, by doing what I did, in some way allow his music to be heard by many more people, because it certainly deserves it. It's amazing music, and words don't describe it. That's the amazing thing. Just listen to him sing. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Cantor Nace. And I can tell you how extraordinary this work was that Cantor Nace arranged. It was a program that was done in Europe a couple of times. It was performed in January of 2020 at Hanover, and I was there as a part of this magnificent performance. And it's something I hope that we'll be able to do here in Los Angeles at Young Israel of North Beverly Hills. So we'd like to turn next to letting you hear some music of Leib Glantz, one of his major pieces that is sort of more than just simply a Chazan's piece. This is like a major composition. And it's to the prayer of Tal, Tfilat Tal, which is done on Pesach. So we hear Hazan Baram now sing Leib Glantz's Tal.
Tal, tal, taletein, leratzot, leratzot, haaretza. שיתנו ורחה בדיצה רוב דגן ותירוש בהפריצה קומם עיר בחפצה חפצך בטל תברך מזון במשמננו על יהי רזון במשמננו על יהי רזון איומה שריצת קצון ייסעת קצון ייסעת קצון אנא תפק לרצון אנא תפק לרצון בטל אנא תפק לרצון בטל I just want to add a couple of things, with your permission, Professor Mark Ligman. All the arrangements here are arranged by my dear teacher, Raymond Goldstein, which we need to acknowledge his musical work, beautiful musical work. Thank you so much, Raymond, for providing us with this beautiful music and setups for this concert. And I want to thank also Tali. We just met a couple of days and we worked on the concert. and together. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much. And also I want to add something about the nature of Tfilat Tal, which is very interesting here. Tali, can you please play just the beginning? I think that this atmosphere that was composed by Leba Leglans, this mystical component here, mystical feeling that we have in this piece, it's in a very deep understanding of the meaning of Tfilat Tal, of the prayer for Tal. Tal, the nature of Tal, the do, it's very, very quiet. If we compare rain we say Gvorot, mazkirin Gvorot HaGeshem. The sound is very strong, but here it's a very mystical experience and feeling that the deep understanding of Leba Leglans of the text and how the Jewish tradition and our sages view Tal versus Geshem, view Pesach, the Geulah of Pesach, and the combination of those prayers in the beginning of Pesach. Thank you so much. Mark, it's your turn now.
So I want to say a few more words about Leib Glans. Leib Glans was a contributor in many different ways. He was a teacher, he composed music, and he lectured and spoke. In many ways, he was a cantor's cantor. He was someone that people really looked up to for insight and information about Chazanut and Jewish music. The interesting part of Glans's life for us in Los Angeles is that he spent a number of years in LA. In 1941, he came to Los Angeles to be the cantor at Sinai Temple from 1941 to 1946. And from 1949 to 54, he was at Sharei Tefillah. From 54 on to the end of his life, he was in Israel at a synagogue in Yerushalayim. What I'd like to share with you is that Sinai Temple's prior location, which is now in Koreatown, this very big stately synagogue, is one where Leba Leglans made a recording. And some work that I've done with Sinai Temple, I have a copy of this recording and I'd like to play it for you. And I'm just going to play you a couple of minutes and you can hear the sound of Leib Glans himself singing in Los Angeles at Sinai Temple in the 1940s. I think what you heard is very much what Cantor Nati Baram described to you, is that real sense of delicacy, how it's just the subtleties, the delicate subtleties of the music that really conveys an interesting meaning. Jerry Glans, who's here today, and we welcome to our Zoom gathering today, has actually put together some important publications on Leib Glans, one that's called The Man Who Spoke to God, a wonderful compendium of information and ideas and also recordings of Leib Glans. And it's very important that we keep Leib Glans's memory alive because of his many important contributions. What we're going to move to next is a recording that Nati made of Leib Glans, and this is another famous work of Glans called Shema Yisrael.
Shema, Shema.
Thank you for letting us hear that most wonderful recording of Leib Glans' Shema Yisrael. Before we play our final recording, I like to give an opportunity and introduce a very special person. Hazan Benny Meisner is a Hazan who recently retired in Toronto. He's had an illustrious career. He is the nephew of Cantor Israel Alter and also was influenced by Glans living growing up in Israel. So I'd like to introduce Hazan Benny Meisner to say a few words. Please turn your mic.
Oh, okay. It's a really surprise for me to be here because I'm mesmerized because Alter and Glantz are in my bones. And Jerry, my friend Ezra, who is my friend from childhood, because I live 3 houses away from Leib Glantz. And the youngster that spoke about the Glantz theory, there's much more to it. And another time I'll have a chance to dissect it and to tell you why Glantz was so great. And there was nobody like him, even Israel Alter. I know Israel Alter from my infancy. I grew up with him. I became a cantor because of him and Glantz and Shlomo Ravitz. And I know the history of Alter because I donated to the Center of Jewish Music in Hanover original recording from 1926. I just also heard that Alter gave a concert in 1921 in Amsterdam. He was 21 with a voice like a heroic tenor. Needless to say, these golden ages are no longer here, but like Jerry Glantz, my dear friend from childhood, we went to the same school because I lived with Glantz from 1954 till 1964. Every Shabbat, I was when Glantz davened in Tiferet Tzvi in Tel Aviv, which was 2 blocks away from where I lived. Jerry told me many times we need to bring Glantz back. And luckily, there's so many young cantors today that are singing Glantz and are really getting into the uniqueness of Leib Glantz. But within these 2 giants, I hope that a generation that I'm of will transmit to the younger generation the importance and the legacy and the incredible depth of traditional Chazanut in North America and Europe and globally throughout the world. I'd like to have a chance to participate in these sessions more, but Mark, whoever gave me the permission to talk, I'm so grateful to you. I'm so grateful to you. If you want to know more about Israel Alter, please be in touch with me through Mark. He knows exactly how to get me. Yishar koach to everybody.
Thank you, Hazan Meisner. So as we wrap up today's program, I just want you all, everyone who's hearing this program today, to know the passion that so many of us have for this music, the passion we have for it to continue. And one of the great joys in my life now is being able to conduct a choir at Young Israel of North Beverly Hills and to work with Hazan Baram. And we hope we'll have many opportunities in the future. So my big thanks to Hazan Nati Baram for thinking of developing this program. It's a pleasure to work with you. And a big thanks to our accompanist today, Tali Todmore, a real talent, important pianist and coach, an individual who's working here in Southern California at many different schools and synagogues. And to Rabbi Dunner for joining us today and the very impromptu meeting, or impromptu contributions by Cantor Joseph Ness and to Hazan Benny Meisner. I think an important point that we just heard from Hazan Meisner is that bringing things from one generation to the next generation is really important, Lador Vador. So with our final piece, with that in mind, I'll turn things back to Hazan Baram.
We still have one piece from Label Glantz, the Rorikra, and then we'll do Lador Vador. דרור יקרא במשפט, וינצרכם כמו בבת, נעים שמכם ולא יושבת, שבו ונוחו ביום שבת. דרוש נביא ועולמי, ואות ישעשה עמי, נטע סורק בתוך כרמי, ששבת בני ימי. דרוש נביא ועולמי, ואות ישעשה עמי, נטע סורק בתוך כרמי, ששבת בני ימי. Ba-bam, ba-bam, ay-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di, ay-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di. Ay-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di, ay-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di, ay-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di. דרוש נביא ועולמי, ואות ישעשה עמי, נטע סורק בתוך כרמי, ששבת בני ימי. בבם, בבם, ay-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di, ay-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di. דרור יקרא לבן מנבט, וירצורכם כמו בבת, נעים שמכם ולא יושבת, שבו ונוחו ביום שבת. דרור יקרא לבן מנבט, וירצורכם כמו בבת, נעים שמכם ולא יושבת, שבו ונוחו ביום שבת. דרור יקרא לבן מנבט, וינצרכם כמו בבת, עם שמכם ולא יושבת, שבו ונוחו ביום שבת. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש. ושבחך אלוקינו, מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי כן מלך גדול, כי כן מלך גדול, וקדוש אתה. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש. ברוך אתה השם
Thank you very much for joining us. We look forward to you joining us for more programs. And Hazan Baram, thank you so much. Tali Tadmor, really beautiful. Have a wonderful day.